With the moderate success of Star Ocean in Japan, Tri-Ace decided to make a sequel, but this time on the PlayStation 1. Let's see what the added power of the PlayStation did for the Star Ocean franchise. Development started on Star Ocean 2 as soon as the first one was released, and it took 2.5 years to complete. The original team is back too, Joe Asanuma, Yoshiharu Gotanda, and Masaki Norimoto, along with series composer Motoi Sakuraba, who I forgot to mention in the first episode. He's actually a really huge composer in Japan and has done a lot of video game soundtracks in the past. He's done soundtracks for the Tales of series, Mario Golf, Mario Tennis, Golden Sun, and even Dark Souls. So my apologies on missing out on him in the first episode, even if I did think his music wasn't that great, but it gets a lot better in this one, and I'll explain that later. The game opted to stick with the 2D style it originated with, but they did manage to add some 3D elements. It also had some FMV cutscenes from Lynx, a company who made FMVs for Final Fantasy VII and Shining Force 3, but I can't find any info on them other than that. The game was released in July of 1998 in Japan and May 1999 in America. This is thanks to Sony Computer Entertainment of America publishing it. This was the first time the series came to America, and yet they still opted to call it the second story before we even saw the first one. The game's intro cutscene shows the full Space Federation for the first time, allowing players to see what sci-fi wonders the game has in store. Again though, once you actually play the game, a lot of the sci-fi elements are put to the side for fantasy ones. At least until the second disc anyway. When creating a new game, you can choose one of the two main characters to play as, being Claude Kenny or Rena Lanford. Claude is actually the son of Ronixus and Iria from the first Star Ocean, as this game takes place 20 years after it and is a direct sequel to it. I decided to go with Claude since he looks a lot cooler than Lena. By choosing him, only one side of the story is shown to me, as Rena is sometimes out of the team throughout the game and experiences other cutscenes Claude does not. It also means that certain characters that Rena can add to the team are now not available to add to my team, adding to the replayability of this game. Not only is there that though, but there's 86 endings to get. This depends on private action relationship points, additions to the team, who you choose as your main character, and other factors. I can only play through this game once, so I'm going to try to make it the best I can. This game is huge, and to get everything possible, you need to play it at least 3 times. I will try my best though, and I won't let you down. The introduction cutscene after you choose Claude shows the first battle with Rizonia, which apparently happened in the Gamma section. Yes, the Rizonians are back at war with Earth. Though I thought they only attacked Earth because of that Gyrovorce guy that we killed at the end of the first game. But here we are, and they're still trying to throw hands. Aw man, there he is. That sexy Ronixus guy with the sick purple hair, and now he's Admiral of the entire Space Federation fleet. And apparently his name is announced Ronicus. But I'm gonna call him Ronixus because that sounds a lot cooler. These cutscenes have a very unique style of showing 2D art over 3D CG images, like with Mr. Gyrovorce here, which I don't remember him looking like this. Luckily, this game starts with the backstory of the first game showing off a younger Ronixus and Iria meeting up with Radix and Millie. But there's no Dorn here. Even the original devs forgot about him. That's pretty sad. At least this gives the American audience of this game a recap of the original game's adventure. So I'll give the game being called the second story a pass. Claude says some sappy shit about his dad, and we can officially start the game. Yeah, no, this is really zoomed out. Maybe we should zoom it in a little bit. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, good. Starting off that zoomed out is not really a good way to show off the graphics of this game, which honestly get pretty impressive at times. Another weird thing is that the movement is mapped to the D-pad and not the analog stick, so moving around is kind of annoying. But honestly, I did get used to it really quick. It does lead to a lot of getting stuck on walls and obstacles, but nothing that frustrates me enough to warrant too much of a complaint. It's just weird that a game released after the DualShock was introduced would not utilize it. I can say, however, that this game made me appreciate the D-pad on the PlayStation controller a lot more, but it still sucks. This unit of the Space Federation is on this planet because of weird signals or waves they received from it. This is actually Claude's first mission ever, and his dad is super proud about it. My son, an ensign. Wow. As you can tell, he's pretty excited. That was my impression of him. He gives Claude a deadly phaser weapon to protect himself as they research this planet. Eventually, Claude disobeys his dad's direct orders and finds a machine which transports him to an underdeveloped planet, of all things. Yeah, I know, what a shock, another underdeveloped planet. Yeah, you remember that underdeveloped planet treaty? Yeah, they threw that out the window again. Fuck it, they said. But, to be fair, this time someone got stuck on a planet and not beamed down to kidnap some kids. I'm looking at you, Ronixus, who literally did this and is now the Admiral. I really like how expressive they made the sprite art though, like when Claude is falling in the machine, he looks great. The art direction in this game is awesome. Not only are the graphics and art better, but the music is leagues better as well. With my favorite song being this one when Claude wakes up in the forest. This is it in the background right now. Sakuraba did not mess around with this game. Claude finds himself stranded in a forest with his communicator completely unresponsive. He comes across our second main character, Rena Lanford, who we saw in the beginning. She's being chased around by an ugly round gorilla, and it's up to Claude to rush up and help. Hello, Claude. Claude, come on, let's go. Someone's in danger. Let's go. Yeah, not gonna lie, I thought this was a cutscene, so I stayed in place as the gorilla thing was all up in Rena's face. Oops. This marks the first battle in this game, which doesn't really show off the battle system too well, so I'll get into that later. It does, however, show off the game's sick voice acting.
This is bad. Here's the enemy. Burn!
Claude is played by some guy named Jimmy Freeman, who literally did a voice for this game and nothing else, except appearing in an episode of a show called Nash Bridges. Where did they find this guy? Honestly though, he doesn't do too bad of a job. It's just weird that he hasn't done anything else. All the other voice actors are also basically unknown, but I really do think they did a good job. The only thing they did wrong though was they forgot to dub one of the spells the mages cast. So every time Tractor Beam is used, you get... Yeah, the sound design isn't that great, but you gotta remember it's a JRPG that came out in the late 90s and it has voice acting. Sony put as much effort as they could into this game, and just thinking about it like that, they did a pretty good job. After Claude saves Rena, she runs away because she's afraid, obviously. Some weird guy just shot a gorilla with a fucking phaser gun in front of her. What else is she gonna do? After running after her for a while, she does accept his apology and asks him where he's from. But he says Earth as if she'd know where that is. Rena asks Claude if he wants to stay with her in the village, and he reluctantly agrees, citing it's against the treaty. At least someone's thinking about that thing. As Claude explores the village while Rena goes home, he hears mumbles of a fabled hero called the Warrior, who will save the world. Now pay attention, because this comes up later. Eventually, Claude meets up with Rena again, who shows him around as her mother makes them dinner. If you go to the shop at this point, you see where the developers attempted to put in 3D models in the game with the items. They definitely have a charm to them, being super simplistic 3D models attempting to mimic items while failing completely. But hey, it was 1998, so, I mean, these are pretty good. According to the devs, these items took a very long time to do, so kudos to them considering just how many items there are in this game. They definitely give the game a dated feel, but it also gives it more character. They really are cool to look at, and you could definitely tell they put in a lot of hard work. When they return back to the house, they eat all the food that Rena's mom made up, which looks amazing by the way. After dinner, her mother spilled the beans to Claude and told him that all the townspeople think that he is the warrior, the hero to save the planet. In the story, the hero is from another world and has a legendary weapon that shoots a beam of light to protect them. You see, the world they live on is being overrun by demons thanks to the sorcery globe, a mysterious object that fell on their planet not too long ago. Since then, their planet has been infected with hordes of monsters, only getting worse. Claude denies any obligation as the warrior, and this makes Rena very upset. He unknowingly gave the entire town a sense of hope, only to have them lose it all immediately. Claude, only wanting to find a way home, decides to set forth in the world to find a way back. After staying the night at the mayor's house, he goes to find Rena to say goodbye. She says her sorry and then tells him she wants to be alone. Agreeing to this, Claude sets off to a neighboring town to start his journey. When leaving the town, we can see that there's a world map. They did it, boys. They fucking did it. We've won. One of the biggest things wrong with the first game was the style the world map was in, being a Zelda-like style. And they fixed it in this game, giving the world map a regular style map that you would usually see in other RPGs such as the Final Fantasy series. This will make the inevitable backtracking and exploration a lot more manageable, and honestly, thank God for that. They even lowered the encounter rate for enemies significantly, which sucks for grinding, but is amazing when you could just walk from point A to point B. Not only that, but they made the towns and cities in this game feel a lot different from each other. All the towns in this game I know the name of and how they look just because of the different feel for all of them. Plus there's more than one song for each of the smaller towns, adding to the variety. The world map and cities that inhabit this game are leagues better than the first game, which makes it a lot more playable. In the next town over, called Salva, Claude runs around trying to see if anyone knows anything about anything, but no, everyone there is clueless. So he decides to go back to Arlia for now. Upon entering, he finds out that Rina's been kidnapped by a creepy guy named Alan. His name was Alan. And weirdly, in his room at his house, you can find a portrait of Rina, which gives off mad creepy vibes, man. Wow, this takes a long time for this picture to load. And it's a very creepy picture of Rina. So, I don't know how did Alan even get this? It doesn't even make any sense. No one in the town is powerful enough to stop him, so I guess it's up to Claude to save her. You go to his house and you blast his door open, which kills Claude's phaser gun, forcing him to use a sword for the rest of the game. And of course, the townfolk see and, again, think he's the warrior. The underground facility that Rina is in acts as the first dungeon of the game, and since Claude no longer has his phaser gun, it shows off the battle system truly for the first time. Just like in Star Ocean 1, this game's combat takes place on a 2.5D plane and follows much of the same mechanics with its action-based combat. But this time you can freely run around as long as you hold down the square button. And really, that was a great addition to this game because it makes combat infinitely better than previously. The ability to freely move around makes things so much better, I can't even imagine going back to the old system. Pressing X brings up the target menu, which again doesn't stop time, but it does allow you to choose a target and run up to them to attack. It's still weird that the target screen doesn't stop enemy movement, but at least you can freely move around this time. Another returning feature is specialties, but this time you can only equip 2 at a time. The short and long range types of specialties still exist, but this time if you use a short range specialty from long range, you run up to the enemy and you do the specialty instead of having the different skill altogether at short range. This may seem like a downgrade, but the long range abilities were never as great, and using a short range attack by auto running up to the enemy feels just leagues better. And since you move around freely this time, enemies actually pose a challenge. Sometimes. I say sometimes because you could still cheese a win every now and then, but it's few and far between when that can happen. However, since there's only Claude right now, the battle system we see is not nearly as fleshed out as it will be with a full party, so we will come back to these mechanics. For now, let's save Rina, which is easier than expected, except for these goddamn bunnies I cannot hit. Jesus Christ. It's a beginner dungeon, so easiness is to be expected. Rina joins you for the boss, so you get to see her in action, or should I say just watching us in action because she actually does nothing. The boss is of course Alan, but for some reason he turns into a monster that's not explained. The cutscene leading into the fight he's normal, and at the end of the fight he's on the ground with no monster in sight, so I guess he can transform? Turns out he was actually being mind controlled by the sorcery globe, however that works, and he's actually a good guy. Yay. The mayor thanks Claude for saving Rina again, which brings up more sorcery globe talk and gets Claude to reconsider looking into it. This time he agrees and Rina decides to join him, but not before a good night's sleep. After Rina goes home, the mayor tells Claude that Rina is not actually from this town and was found in the woods by Westa when she was very young. This, of course, is the reason Rina wants to go on this adventure, to find out who she is. The next morning, Claude and Rina leave town, and thus Star Ocean, the second story, truly begins. Now, forgive me if I miss everything here, as there is a lot to talk about. From gameplay mechanics to story, this game is jam-packed, and I'm going to try to fit as much as I can into this review for you guys. Upon leaving the village, we get another returning feature to Star Ocean, this being private actions, which affect the story endings quite a bit in this game. I mean, to be fair, they affected the first game's story as well, but this game does things so much better. Just as an example, the first private action has Claude go up to Rina's room to talk to her about her past. This shows backstory that would otherwise be unseen if you had skipped it entirely. Not only is there character backstories, but there usually is a choice you have to make that affects the relationship levels you are at with the characters you interact with. These relationship points can be made through private actions, putting characters in the party together, and by writing books, which will make sense later, I promise. Relationship points change endings and character pairings. Since I only beat the game once, I only got one of the 80+ endings this game has to offer. To be honest, outside of the Rena and Claude pair, I didn't really pay much attention to the other pairings, but it's very in-depth and could be a video all on its own. These private actions can also trigger side quests and can span across multiple towns. One that really sticks out to me is when you get this character down the line named Bowman, who is a doctor. If you do a private action in this one town, you can find him consoling a mother about her dying daughter. If you choose to help, you have to go to a different town to research a method to cure the girl. After finding that method, you must scour a dungeon and find the material necessary for the treatment. After finding the medicine and rushing all the way back to the village, you find out that there's only a 50-50 chance that the girl will live if you give her the medicine. And depending on that selection, you can see two different scenes. One of the girl alive running around, and the other of the mother mourning. Claude has to decide whether to give the girl the treatment or let her live out her days in peace. It's seriously moving stuff, and I'm not giving it enough credit. You can clearly see how the private actions have drastically increased in quality. Another thing private actions do is give you the opportunity to recruit new members to your party. For instance, in the first castle town you go to, called Cross, there's a very short scene showing a three-eyed man walking from the castle. This is actually a member you can recruit to your party much later in the game. But if you don't see this scene before moving on with the game, he won't be available to you, nor will his counterpart. Yeah, that's right. With this game returns the multiple party members you can recruit, but this time there's even more. This, matched with the two main characters to play as, allows for plenty of replay value for this game. If you choose Claude, you can recruit members that Rena cannot, and vice versa. There's so many character combinations to choose from, it's kind of overwhelming. And I didn't even get to see the character with my favorite design in this game. His name is Ashton, and he has two goddamn dragon heads sticking out of his body. Isn't that sick? Moving on, Rena and Claude gain audience with the king at Cross Castle to talk about the sorcery globe. Unfortunately, the king has very little information about the globe, but this conversation gains the attention of a curious mage named Celine, who wants them to go with her to investigate a cave and find treasure. Why? Because she's a treasure hunter, of course. And she needs more protection to find the treasure, but she doesn't tell you that. Of course, you could just flat out say no to her and move on, but I decided to say yes because I wanted another member on my team. After getting her, I went to do all the private actions I could with her, and I got Rena a cool necklace so she could love me, and I went the wrong way and the whole party died because the enemies were really strong, so I lost an hour of game time because I forgot to save. Which is not the first time this has happened to me through this playthrough, but you know, we'll survive. Finally, we get to the real Cross Cave, and I think it's time to talk about dungeon design in this game. Again, it's better than the first game. Can you see a trend yet? This game encourages exploration to find all the items and treasure possible, though there's a lot of branching paths and dead ends. These aren't too bad though, and since the random encounter rate is pretty low and can be turned even lower with the right skills, which I'll get to in a bit, it feels really great to explore. There's items all over every dungeon, even in the corners no one would think to look. There was definitely a lot of thought put into designing these dungeons. The only thing I don't like is the fact that you have to walk all the way back to the start after you beat the boss in all of the dungeons. It's just annoying that there isn't an item or a spell to jump you back to the beginning. Tough luck if you have to save, or you need items, or you need to heal your team. Yep, that's right, you gotta walk the entire dungeon back. This is the 90s, baby, there's no hand-holding here. Now that we have more of a party, let's talk about the battle system again since it's more fleshed out. Battle strategies for specific classes of characters return in this game, as well as formations, which admittedly I forgot to talk about in the first game's review, as I didn't use them much for that game, and to be fair, I use them even less in this game. Formations are just layouts your team uses for battle. There's a whole bunch with a wide range of placements, but I really only use the straight line because that's the default. I did switch to a tri-attack strategy later in the game where I put my mage in the back and everyone else was up front. It did feel like it made a difference as enemies wouldn't go for the mage when the melee fighters were up front, but like I said, I rarely switch this up. Strategies are the same, but there's more options to choose from for each character, such as for Rena. She can be told to heal teammates exclusively, which will literally only have her heal you. Or you could set her to aid allies, which will have her cast buffs like haste and defense up in addition to healing magic. Claude and other melee fighters get strategies such as use up all MP or conserve killer moves, which are the specialties I was talking about before. The best part about the battle system in this game though, is that the AI actually does shit this time. They are infinitely smarter than in the first game, making them actually useful in fights. For instance, they actually revive you and heal you if you die. Well, the magic users will anyway, as the AI still doesn't use items. And unfortunately, the revive spell comes way late in this game, so you'll mostly be using those items. Luckily, you can switch characters in battle, which adds a whole variety of moves to use in each fight. And if you die, you don't have to sit there hopelessly watching your entire team fail. You could switch and start avenging yourself while Rena revives you. Or you can just revive yourself with an item and switch back to Claude, as I usually did. Claude is just way too good not to play as. I mean, I enjoyed playing the other characters, except Opera and the mages. Mages are boring and Opera just sucks. Still though, adding the switching of characters, smarter AI, and faster, more intense battles really adds to this game. And they actually make bosses fun to battle, unlike the press A to win battles of the first game. Okay, to be fair, this game also feels like that sometimes too, but it's just leagues better to play since the enemies and bosses are far better at fighting. Moving on, it's time to talk about skills, and this is where the game is extremely in-depth. Now in the first game, I didn't talk too much about skills because I didn't understand it as well, but this time I know a lot about these skills, and there is a lot to learn. There's 4 types of skills: knowledge, sensibility, technique, and combat skills. You gain skill points every time your character levels up, and you use those points to level up skills. Leveling up these skills will make you level up certain stats for your characters, while also making your character learn skills they can use in the specialty or item creation menus. Like, remember the whistling skill from the first game that I thought did nothing? Well, if you level it up, it allows for your character to learn a skill called familiar, which allows you to summon animals. There's a bunch of different item creation techniques that a character can utilize, such as composing music, writing, item customization, metalwork, replication, identifying, and so much more. There's also the specialties the characters can learn, such as scouting, which allows you to either lower or heighten the encounter rate. And there's also practice, which allows you to go into battle with lowered abilities but gain more experience at the end of the battle. There's a lot to the system. It's insane. And this time it actually feels like the skills did something and were extremely useful, especially the combat skills. Combat skills are shown in battle with a graphic that pops up on the side of the screen with the name of the skill being utilized. There are skills like strong blow, which adds more power to your attack, and flip, which causes your character to flip behind an enemy to attack its backside. And some enemies can only be attacked from behind, so flip is very important for those guys, otherwise you'll be swinging and doing no damage. There's also skills like piercing enemy armor, surviving with 1 HP left, and faster movement in battle. Remember in the first game where you had to use your skill points to gain the ability to run? Well, luckily this time you can run from the start, and that skill is just used for battle speed now. Like I said before, sensibility, technique, and knowledge skills all allow characters to learn item creation and specialty techniques. But just because you can learn these does not mean every character can utilize them. This is where talents come in. Talents are predetermined strengths that the characters start out with and can learn if you try hard enough. But that takes forever. So let's say you want a character to learn how to play and compose music. Well, if that character doesn't have the pitch and sense of rhythm talent, they'll play music that sounds very off and horrible, like this. This makes the effect of the music not work, so having those talents is very important. There's also talents like dexterity that's used for pickpocketing, the originality talent that's used for customization and metalwork, and there's also a sense of design one for arts and machinery talent. The list is pretty huge. Pickpocketing is a huge skill though, and gets you a lot of items that you cannot get anywhere else, including some of the best weapons for characters in this game. You have to level up the courage and poker face skills to gain the ability to pickpocket, but if you don't have the dexterity skill, it almost never works. My only character with dexterity was Rena, so she was the designated pickpocket for me. But that means I can't pickpocket my own teammates during private actions, and they hold some of the best armor in the game, especially Ernest, the 3-eyed man I was talking about before. I didn't really use pickpocketing until halfway through the game, but once I had it, I could not stop trying to steal from anyone. If you fail, sometimes the NPCs get mad at you, but this is rare if you level up the skill enough and have the dexterity talent. There's so much more to these skills and talents, but if I kept talking about this video would never end, so I think it's time to move on. So from this point on, the spoilers get a little bit more heavy, including the start of the second disc, so if you don't want to learn any of that and you want to go into this game fresh, stop here right now and just go play this game, because you already know it's a masterpiece. It's a great game, so go play it. But I'm only getting into a little bit, so if you want to keep watching, then keep watching, and thank you. After a bunch of story and plot, including adding a lot of characters to the team and exploring 2 whole continents, we finally get to see the main villains of the game being the 10 Wise Men. These 10 Wise Men, just like the main villain of the first game, are a bunch of synthetic humans that just want to destroy the universe because, you know, of course they do. And they fucking succeeded absolutely destroying Expel and trapping our... Oh wait, hold on, I gotta put in the second disc. Hold on. And trapping our protagonists on another world. This half of the game is where things really open up and things get a lot more fun. After some plot details, you get a Synard, which is a flying animal that you control to fly around the world, getting to experience all the towns and dungeons in whatever order you please. Not only that, but you have a full party of characters to change around and level up with different skills and abilities unique to them. After this, your main goal is defeating the 10 Wise Men and avenging the destroyed Expel in hopes of saving the universe once and for all. Well, until the next game, that is. I don't want to ruin any more surprises or little details of this game, so I'm going to stop there. There's so much to do on both planets, and with the addition of 2 different characters to play as and the number of different recruits you can have to your team, there's tons of replay value. This game just has so much to offer, and there's so much to do, and there's so much I didn't go into, and it's so special. You need to experience this yourself. This game does things infinitely better than the first game. Every single aspect of this game is far, far better. The battle system, the characters, the story, the world map, the skills, and utilizing them. It's all just far, far better. If you have not played Star Ocean, the second story, or Star Ocean, Second Evolution, which is its remake, I highly, highly, highly suggest it. These games are jam-packed with content. They have so much to offer. They are leagues better than the first game, and it's just... they're fucking amazing. It's all I could say. I had so much fun with these games. You guys need to play them, and that's all I'm saying. But for now, I have to move on to Star Ocean Blue Sphere, which is a Japanese-only Game Boy Color game, and I'm so curious about what they jam-packed into this small-ass cartridge on a fucking Game Boy Color, released in 2001? You guys are crazy! That's after the Game Boy Advance came out, or close to it. But, anyway, leave a like, comment, subscribe, whatever. I don't know. I'm not good at this YouTube thing, so I have so many games in my hand. I don't know what to do.